We come to the end of our spellcasting journey here with the Druid, but by no means are we yet done. Hello everyone, and welcome back down here to the Gamer's Den with me, your host, Jordan, your Master of Lore and Storyteller Extraordinaire, here to talk to you today about the 8th and 9th level spells available to the 1st edition Pathfinder Druid, and my goodness, do they have some just tasty options available to them. Now, again, like I've mentioned before throughout all of these guides, which are just guides, not hard and fast rules to live by, not all spells are created equal, and you'll want to be careful with your selections, but just remember that you are a prepared spellcaster and you function like a divine caster, so you're able to swap out your spells day to day, so bear that in mind. And also, just as always, if you see a spell that just really fits what you're going for, then obviously go ahead and use it and make use of that, and go forth and have fun. That's the most important thing with these games. But before we get into everything we have on offer for you today, if you're new here to the channel, go on down there, hit the subscribe button, and become a regular member here at the Gamer's Den. Or, if you've already gone on ahead and listed yourself on such an incredible roster of legendary heroes, then go on down to hit the like button and share the video far and wide. Now, we'll actually start talking about your spells here, and of course we are going to be starting off with 8th level spells at Reverse Gravity. You select a point within 100 feet plus 10 feet per level. You reverse gravity in an area equal to 1 10-foot cube per level, lasting 1 round per level. That gets to be pretty significant right there. Creatures who are unable to fly or hover begin falling through the area you designate, taking fall damage if they impact a solid surface. Otherwise, they will just oscillate at the end of the area of the spell effect that you've generated. So you can have targets hovering in midair, unable to move, entirely vulnerable to you, all the spells your friends can throw, and any other ranged attack options that might be available. Not only that, but if you slam them up into a roof, damage. If you slam them up into a roof full of stalactites and other rough, terrible areas, there's potentially additional damage with that, depending on what your DM's ruling might be. Or, if there are any other hazards up there, well, avail yourself of those and make ready use of them. And don't forget that when the spell ends, they're going to come tumbling back on down and potentially take more damage that way as well. So, plan ahead, prepare accordingly, and make terrifying use of this incredible spell. The next option, though, is Blood Mist. Summon a 60-foot radius rust-red toxic algae mist within 100 feet plus 10 feet per level. Targets must make a fortitude save or lose 1d4 wisdom and become enraged, attacking any nearby creatures. This lasts for the duration of the spell, which is 1 minute per level. On save, the creature is unaffected, but if they leave and then re-enter the mist, this will trigger another save on their behalf. So they're not going to continuously take wisdom damage, but that wisdom damage still can set them up for failure against other saves from other spells. So if you're teamed up with a witch, a sorcerer, illusionist, whatever might be playing off of wisdom saving throws, this will combo pretty nicely with that. And because you're going to get your opponents to start attacking one another, this still has some extra benefits there, because you don't need all your enemies to fail, you just need a couple of them to fail if you can catch them in the area. And this is a pretty significant area to catch your opponents in, so definitely another great one to make use of. Then we come to Euphoric Tranquility. Touch target creature, and on a failed will save for 1 round per level, the target will view all creatures as treasured friends and abhor violence. Its speed will be halved and can't initiate violence, but it does get another will save if there is violence initiated against it. On success, though, the creature acts normally for 1 round. On failure, the creature moves at half speed away from the threat. While under the spell, the target is treated as helpful when asked questions, though they can be a bit ramblingly disoriented in its euphoric state, and the quality of the information you get might vary, so you may have to press, keep them focused, and be very clever with your wording to kind of draw things out. So don't be afraid to roleplay with it and get them out and to open up. Definitely a very useful spell with utility inside and outside of combat all the way around there. So, another really, really helpful one to consider. And then, of course, we come to Summon Nature's Ally 8. Summon one creature at a point within 25 feet plus 5 feet every 2 levels, or 1d3 creatures from Nature's Ally 7, or 1d4 plus 1 creatures from Nature's Ally 6. The Purple Worm, Elder Elemental, and Cloud Giant are going to be your only picks for this particular spell, and they're all really solid picks. And the Purple Worm is just going to be absolutely incredible. It's just got a great grappling ability, and it's going to do a significant amount of damage, whereas the Elder Elementals, they're going to have a lot of great effects that they bring, and their utility all the way around with the flexibility that you get in choosing between, you know, earth, fire, wind, water, all of those things that make you the avatar will absolutely be incredibly handy to have to make selections of. And Cloud Giants are just a really solid combat staple with their size, their reach, their ability to hit things. Absolutely a useful pick. And then the fact, of course, that you're summoning multiple creatures from the previous Summon Nature's Ally spells make that even more useful. Now we move into your 9th level spells, the pinnacle of your power, the absolute aspect of nature's raw might and wrath. We start off with Polar Midnight. At a point within 25 feet plus 5 feet every 2 levels, you plunge a 30-foot spread into an icy darkness for 1 round per level. Illumination will drop by 2 steps, only to darkness and not anything supernaturally dark. And creatures in the area will take 5d6 cold damage and make a fortitude save, or lose 1d6 dex. Creatures that don't move on their turn become encased in ice, equivalent to a wall of ice, and become helpless, unable to breathe. Corpses that are in the area longer than 1 round are transmuted to solid ice and cannot be revived, short of true resurrection, miracle, or wish. And as a move action, you may move the area up to 10 feet in any direction. So, while blasting spells aren't usually the most effective way to go, cold damage is not as common as commonly resisted or have as many immunities as, say, fire resistance does. Fire resistance and fire immunity being the most common kind of elemental immunity available in Pathfinder. So, your cold damage is going to be coming in pretty reliably, and the fact that this also causes a loss of 1d6 dexterity potentially is just great, because dexterity is just that prime stat. It affects ranged attacks, armor class, a lot of skills, reflex saves, initiative. So dropping that really wildly affects your targets, and you're affecting multiple targets with this mobile spell effect that you're able to direct and move around. And on top of that, you're utterly removing a lot of opponents' abilities to bring back any of these targets that you actually end up killing, and you're trapping opponents as well too within sheets of ice. I mean, there's nothing to not like about this spell. The effects are just so many and readily available and on hand that you would be crazy to not have this spell ready to go pretty frequently once you hit this level. The next option is Storm of Vengeance. You select a point within 400 feet plus 40 feet per level to create a 360-foot radius storm cloud that lasts up to 10 rounds while you concentrate. On the first round, creatures in the storm must make a fortitude save or be deafened for 1d4 times 10 minutes. Now, fortitude saves, by the time you have access to 9th level spells, there's going to be a lot of creatures that have good fortitude saves, and there are some creatures that will be able to readily make this, although it should be noted not all of them can, and the deafened condition is still useful to throw down on certain targets, particularly spellcasters. The second round deals 1d6 acid damage with no save. I mean, acid damage is not very common on the immunities and resistances chart, so it's not bad, but the damage is pretty pitiful at this level. Third round, you call down 6 bolts of lightning, choosing which targets to hit once, and deal 10d6 electric damage with the reflex save for half. So the fact that you can do essentially 60 d6 points of damage overall is great. It sucks that you're limited to only striking a target once, so you can pick up to 6 separate individuals to select for this. Now, the electric damage is still nice, and it's just an added part and effect of this spell, which is pretty damn fantastic. So, it's not bad. It's not great either, though. 4th round, hailstones deal 5d6 bludgeoning damage with no save. Now, that bludgeoning damage is not very much, but it is bludgeoning damage and no save. You're going to deal that damage pretty reliably to a lot of different targets. But on the 5th through 10th rounds, rain obscures all sight, including dark vision, and giving concealment at 5 feet. Beyond 5 feet gives you gives targets total concealment. So concealment, of course, grants that 20% miss chance to all attacks, and total concealment is a 50% miss chance to all those attacks. And then the target speed is reduced to 3/4. Well, I say target speed, any creatures in the area have their speed reduced to 3/4. Ranged attacks are impossible in the storm. Spells cast are disrupted unless the caster succeeds on a concentration check equal to the Storm of Vengeance spell save DC plus the spell level being cast. So this is a 9th level spell. The base is 10 plus the spell level plus your casting modifier, which is wisdom. So let's just say you have a +6 modifier off of your wisdom, so you're already looking at a DC 25, and if the enemy caster is attempting to cast an 8th level spell, that's a DC of 33. So while that's not impossible, that still is an added difficulty for them to have to try to overcome each and every time they go to cast a spell. So that can actually be incredibly difficult for them to deal with. All the way around, Storm of Vengeance isn't bad. Like, there's a lot of really good effects here, a lot of blue listed, indicating a pretty high level rating on my part from the various effects. So why is it still kind of just a greenish rated spell? Like a good spell, but not the absolute greatest like so many of these others have been. It's because this affects your allies too. This affects all of your allies. They will suffer the same vision impairments. Rangers in the party that are focused more on ranged attacks are not really going to enjoy this spell. Your friendly spellcasters are going to struggle to cast their own spells, but this is still handy because you can be in wild shape and be closing the distance with targets. Now, just bear in mind that, as far as I can tell, I think your speed is reduced as well too, but check with your DM, definitely recheck some of the rules for this. But if you're wild shaped though, and you're already on top of your targets, having this coming down to really mess with everyone and play merry hell with them while you are shredding things as some kind of celestial dire bear or whatever form you may have transitioned into. You probably can't do celestial if I'm remembering right. I'm just kind of spitballing and throwing things out of my head at the moment. It's an epic image, though, just some gigantic, ferocious bear haloed in a glimmering light as the storm conjures overhead. Light bolts of lightning and acidic rain and lethal hailstones pouring down as the winds kick up, spewing all this debris and darkness everywhere as you just tear everything to shreds. I love it. Anyways, before I let myself get lost in the sauce again, we move on from there to an example of a spell that you really want to avoid, even though in theory it sounds kinda great, and that's regeneration. Touch target living creature to restore severed body parts. If the severed pieces are present and touching the target, this takes 1 round. If not, this takes 2d10 rounds. This also heals 4d8 plus 1 point per level of damage, max of a plus 35. This also removes exhaustion, fatigue, and non-lethal damage, which is actually pretty handy to have there. So why isn't this great? Well, the healing's not super great. It's still actually a little bit better than some of the different cure wounds spells, but it's still not incredible. And there's also the logistics of gathering up pieces, particularly mid-fight. If you're having to go collect severed limbs to reattach to your allies and get them all back together mid-fight to keep them from dying, or at least restore them to total effectiveness, that puts you or some of the other party members at some risk. And if you're able to do this in one round, then hey, great, but that still is a bit of risk. That's still time and action economy devoted to recovering missing limbs to try to take care of your ally. And if you don't have that, then they're potentially down for 2 rounds to up to 20 rounds. You're probably going to be averaging somewhere around 11, 12 rounds or so off of roll a 2d10, which that's over a full minute technically in combat, and in a fight over that many rounds, a lot can happen. If enemy casters or enemy ranged attackers see that you're trying to restore the target, and they're any kind of smart, and at this level they are probably going to be pretty smart, cunning, ruthless, vicious, they're going to start taking pot shots at your ally while you're trying to heal them and potentially take them out of the fight even faster. And also, this only works on a living target, so if they kill them while this spell is working on them, well, so much for that. It's a wasted spell. And if you're waiting to use this after combat, well, I mean, that may be the best point to use it, but even still, when it comes to missing limbs, that tends to be lethal kind of quick. And just bear in mind that losing limbs is kind of a little bit of an optional rule, and actually the rules for attacking limbs are an optional rule set out of the Ultimate Combat book. So it's an optional rule set that's not, in my opinion, particularly well designed when it comes to losing limbs mid-combat and the like, so it can be a little bit tricky. They're not the most well thought out, and it tends to be kind of a pain in the ass to kind of house rule all the way around. Not a lot of games actually introduce stuff like that, but, you know, just bear that in mind. So regeneration, there's a lot to it. It can kind of slow some things down, and it's working somewhat off of an optional rule set, and even then, it's better to use it outside of combat, and if you're using it outside of combat, you probably have a lot of other better options available to you. So, yeah, I mean, this isn't the greatest spell ever, so I'd say skip this. You're probably going to be pretty safe in skipping this more times than not. So then, lastly, we're going to close out on a good spell, and that is Summon Nature's Ally 9. Summon 1 creature at a point within 25 feet plus 5 feet every 2 levels, or 1d3 creatures from Summon Nature's Ally 8, or 1d4 plus 1 creatures from Summon Nature's Ally 7. You choose between a Storm Giant and a Pixie. The Storm Giant every time. The Pixie has some interesting spell-like abilities, like I believe Irresistible Dance, but the Storm Giant is just going to be raw combat utility, and even then, if you need more than one ally brought out onto the battlefield, then you have 1d4 plus 1 from Summon Nature's Ally 7, or the 1d3 from Summon Nature's Ally 8. That really opens up some interesting options for you. I mean, imagine summoning 2 purple worms mid-fight to really just mess with and harass your opponents, to grapple them up and get them trapped. And purple worms are some pretty good-sized creatures as well, too, so you get a lot of flexible utility and combat options with all of this. But what do you think? Go on down to the comments below and let me know your thoughts. Did you like today's video? Did you dislike it? Either way, hit those like or dislike buttons and let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. What other spells might you throw in as interesting options for the Druid? Certainly you have options like Wall of Lava, which are just really, really, really cool. And then of course, as was mentioned before, you know, we have lots of interesting scrying spells overall throughout the list that can really do a lot of gathering information for you that can help inform what spells you might need when you go into particular situations on hand. And between you and a wizard or witch or whatever other spellcaster you may be teamed up with, you can really kind of get things hammered out and nailed down ahead of time. Or hell, working with a bard with all of their knowledge skills can really help with all of that too. And set up some interesting interactions outside of combat that are just some solid roleplay moments between players and maybe an NPC or two as they try to figure out what exactly it is they're going into. Just lots of options abound if you just think about it a little bit and play with it. And here I am rambling on again. Remember, if you're new here to the channel, go on down there, hit the subscribe button, and become a regular member of the Gamer's Den. And ignore me as I sit here picking at the splinter I got from chopping firewood earlier. Anyways, thank you all so very much for your time. You all have yourselves a good night.